friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And though I'm not sure what I'm going to call this video yet, it's really just some random thoughts and quotes I wanted to share with you when it comes to dealing with people that either make excuses for not wanting to put up for hard times or make statements like, well, I'm just coming to your house. So before I get into that, I do want to link you back to a playlist we did back in 2019, I believe it was, a series that we did that I ended up calling Tough Topics for Discussion. And the first video on that is, what will you do when they come knocking? Now, that particular video was more about how are you going to handle the situation when people start showing up when hard times hit. But I want to focus today more on what to say or do before that stuff happens to help people understand where you are at and things that will help maybe get them to think and consider doing these things for themselves. So I'm going to start with a quote from one of my followers that I just loved. And this is just a general quote in regards to putting up food and more to help get you through hard times. And what he said was, putting things in storage is like printing your own money. And I just love that, because really it is, but it's better than that, because we know what happens with all the money they keep printing, and it keeps devaluing the dollar. But when you're putting up food in storage, it increases in value as the price of things goes up, and it rather than losing its value, and especially as those things become needed. Now, I'm going to give you two quotes in particular in responding to people that say, oh, I'm just going to come to your house. And the first one is from someone who follows me both on Rumble and on Freesteading. And what they said was, I have a 50-pound bag of rice set aside for you. My rate is 1 cup of rice for 8 hours of garden work. That will be inspected. Don't like my offer? Plant a garden now and avoid the rush. Love that. Thought it was great. Now, my response that I've been using for a few years now, whenever I have somebody that comes in and says that, and most of the time, yes, these people are being trolls, or it's your family or your friends just kind of making fun of you. Oh, I'm going to come to your house. And they might be saying it offhanded, but you have to know when they're saying that, they, especially the people that know you, they really do mean it. Even if they're saying it in a joking way and think it will never happen, they will come around. So what I say to those people is, our lifeboat is already full. You will need to build your own. Another way you could use that same analogy is, well, our lifeboat is already full, but you could bring your own lifeboat or bring the materials needed to make our lifeboat bigger so that we can fit you in there too. So there's just a couple of ideas. And what I'm really hoping this video will spark is even more ideas and suggestions of how to respond. And this doesn't have to be rude or mean. It's just what we're looking at is ways that will get people to rethink what they just said to you and what you shared with them. Is something that can be brief and short and to the point. It doesn't have to be mean. But this whole idea of they got to learn how to do it themselves, not depend on you to do it for them. They need to learn how to take responsibility for the future of their own selves and the future of their own families. This is what is very important. Rather than assuming that they can fall back on you, especially if you're a loved one, to just take care of them. That's pretty lazy. Now, I know some other ideas is that even for those who just didn't prepare, some people will, just like this comment about the rice, some people will say, well, as long as you're bringing whatever you already have stored up and you're prepared to do some labor, because it's going to be a lot of work. Because I think a lot of people just assume, oh, you got all this food, you can just feed everyone. Well, no, there's still a lot of work involved, especially when you're talking about having a garden, because you can't rely on just what you've been buying from the store and stocking up on. You've got to have a way to have renewable sources, and that's why a garden is important, and that's why prepping almost always leads to homesteading, which of course then leads to freesteading. And then there's the people that want to use the excuse of, well, I'm just going to trust in God. Well, we should trust in God, because we cannot. I did a video a while back on where you're putting your trust in. And one of those is like, if we're just putting our trust in what we're doing for ourselves, and those of us who are believers, well, any of that can be taken away at any time. So as a believer, yes, our trust number one needs to be in God first. However, a couple of things that they tend to forget is that when God warned Noah what was to come, and Joseph what was to come, these guys did not just sit back on their laurels and say, oh, God's going to take care of us. No, they took action. In fact, Noah did exactly what God asked him to do, and that was to build the ark. Joseph, he stored up for 7 years all that grain that was coming in, because they knew they were going to have 7 years of plenty. So while they have all this excess grain coming in, they were storing it up because they knew there was going to come 7 years of famine. And if it wouldn't have been for that grain, there would have been a whole race of people lost. God didn't go down there and put that grain in the silos for them. God did not come down here and build the ark for Noah and his family. They still had to take a certain amount of responsibility and be grateful the warning was given to them. And then there's also another parable that, even though it's referring to our spiritual life, and that is the tale of the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins. So there were the 10 virgins that were showing up for the feast. 5 of them brought excess oil for their lamps, because you never know how long it's going to take for that bridegroom to show up. The other 5 were foolish and only brought their lamps with no excess oil. So when the oil was running out, the 5 wise ones that had prepared had enough oil to get them through, but then the 5 foolish ones wanted them to share their oil when they ran out. And it's like, well, if we share with you, then we'll all run out of oil. You need to go get some more oil. But unfortunately for them, it was already too late, because by the time they went and got more oil and came back, the bridegroom had already shown up and the doors were closed and nobody else was allowed in. So, that's just a brief rundown of the parable for those who are unfamiliar. And I think it's very much apropos to even the physical. So, share. This is another thing you can share with people. And then another thing you can ask people, especially when those who are talking about trusting in God, do they buy health insurance and house insurance? I mean, I understand a lot of us are forced to buy auto insurance if we want to drive our vehicles. And if you have a loan on your house, like we do not, you're forced to buy house insurance. But we don't have a loan, we don't have house insurance. But we do still have health insurance because, well, it is that just in case something really bad happens, a major emergency. It is nice to know it's there, though I still keep thinking about getting rid of it. But at any rate, if any of these people are willingly paying for insurance that they're not being forced to pay for because they're afraid of what's going to happen, then are they truly trusting in God with their future when it comes to that? And make sure it's not approached rudely. Approach it in a loving manner. Just say, well, consider this. Are you paying for insurance that you're not already being forced to pay for? Maybe it's life insurance or health insurance or something. Are you buying this? Are you not trusting God to take care of yourself and your family if something happens to you? Or are you not trusting God to provide if something happens to your home? So this is a way that you can kind of bring that back to them when they want to accuse you of not trusting God or saying that they're just going to trust God. Jesus did not even throw himself off that mountain, to test and see if God was going to catch him or his angels were going to catch him. We don't go and build our homes on the sand or our homes on a railroad track saying, well, I just trust God to take care of me and my family and my home. And I really like this spot, so I'm going to build my home right here on the railroad track, an active railroad track at that. So obviously there's a difference between trusting God and just flat out being foolish. Whenever you're approaching these topics with people, you got to be as loving as possible, because if it's said in a haughty manner or accusatory manner, it's not going to be accepted. There might be a few that might take it, but most people just won't take it if it sounds like you're just yelling at them or being rude to them or making them feel small. So it's very important that you be very loving about how you approach it. Of course, sometimes it also depends on how they're treating you in the first place. So if someone's being rude, then I don't have a problem saying, well, no, you're not welcome to come here. You need to take care of your own self. Just like the video I did that will have been about 6 weeks ago on it's about not living in fear, you need to make it clear to people that being prepared doesn't mean you're being prepared for the for the end of the world. It is about being prepared for whatever life throws your way, because anything can happen at any time. Anybody can lose a job for whatever reason. Anyone can get in a car accident or have some other major catastrophe happen that can make it so they're unable to work, or they lose a family member. And all of a sudden your whole life is in upheaval and you're wondering where the next paycheck's going to come from so you can buy your groceries from the local store, and or pay your rent or your mortgage or whatever it is. So people need to understand this too. So I'm also going to link you back to that video as well, because I think it's important that people listen to that and understand, and it helps them, not only for the sake of the people that are not doing these things yet, but for the people that already are doing these things, to kind of rethink of why you do what you do and how best to approach people that want to scoff at you because you do. And then the last one, and I'm going to actually do a separate, more in-depth video on this, is the excuse that, well, I can't afford to do it. I think half the problem there is people look at, well, prepping supplies are expensive. Well, stop calling them prepping supplies. You can go down to the grocery store and buy some extra cans of canned food, and that's being prepared. We don't call those prepping supplies. You can grow a garden and start putting up your own food, and growing your own food is incredibly cheap to buying it in the store. Your biggest expense is going to be getting started in getting a canner or jars or whatever. And I actually covered some of this in another video I'm going to recommend on getting started in food preservation and how to get, where's the least expensive way to get started in putting up food, and then building up from there. Stop calling these things prepping supplies, because people start thinking of things like bunkers and 3 years worth of freeze-dried food that costs thousands of dollars, or even a freeze dryer that costs thousands of dollars, and so they think they can't afford it. But they need a more realistic, more down-to-earth, more everyday approach to this. So when you go to the store, instead of buying 1 bag of rice, just buy 2. And that can just be a 5-pound bag of rice. Buy a second 5-pound bag of rice, or buy a 10-pound instead of 2 5-pounds. If they're down there buying some canned vegetables, well, throw in an extra can or 2 of those same vegetables, or soup, or whatever canned goods that people tend to buy. You can also go into are you spending money on a coffee stand coffee once, 2, 3, 5 times, 7 times a week? Are you going out to eat even once a week? And actually most families now, I was surprised when I read this, are going out to eat 4, 5, and 6 times a week. That is a lot of money. And if people can afford to do that, they can certainly afford to stop doing that, take that extra money, learn how to cook and bake from scratch, and then put the money they saved into more food for their storage or fuel or whatever it is they need. So just a few different ways you can approach it. But anyway, I really want some feedback in the comments. I'd like to hear some really good interactions that you have with people. How do you approach these situations? And when people say these things to you, also feel free to share your testimony of, have you shared things in such a way that really got people thinking, that actually did get them on the right path? Not everyone will follow suit, but some will when it's worded correctly. And no matter how great something is worded, you're still going to get a lot of people that will just blow you off. They don't want to hear it because they simply don't want to do it. And you got to just expect that and let it go. But there's always that chance you can plant a seed that's going to help people to really consider and maybe finally get on the right track. Using real life experiences is also very, very helpful, and I do that too. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to go down and read the comments, and also in the description box to check out the links I'll be putting in there by clicking on more or show more somewhere down here below the screen. And thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.